What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to show you a couple things on how to change your network settings on a Linux host. And I am using a CentOS version 7 on VMware. So it's basically just a file I downloaded and then a couple of clicks in VMware, and here I am. So it's really not difficult. I encourage you to go out to centos.org, I believe, and download it, or just Google it. You'll find the file, download the ISO is what the file type is, and set it up in VMware. The free workstation player is what you want to download with VMware. So for starters, we'll go over here and just pop open a terminal. And CentOS is a lot like Red Hat, and actually it's like identical. So Red Hat is Linux Enterprise that a lot of companies use. It's like the corporate version of Linux. And CentOS is the desktop free version. So Red Hat is one of the only few operating systems or flavors that of Linux that actually costs money. So for starters, let me just go over some basic commands. The goal today is just to show you how to change your IP address, where that's located, how you do that, and how do you map an IP address to a human readable name such as, uh, you know, Google.com. There's some kind of IP address that maps these human readable names so a computer can understand it, and that's just what a domain name is. So if I hit who am I, it'll tell you I'm running as live user. And in order to make some administrative changes like this, we actually need to switch over to root. In order to do that, we do sudo su. Now if you do who am I, it'll tell you it's root, or if you look right here, it'll tell you you are root. And root is equivalent to administrator in Windows. So now I have full reign to make whatever changes I want to this machine, and that's good and bad because if I make some important change, I could actually just like corrupt the whole operating system. So it's dangerous. If I hit exit, I can actually just do sudo and then run a command. So I'm actually running this command as root. You can't really tell, but I am. So I'm running this as an administrator right now just by putting sudo in front of it. So I don't have to actually switch my user over to root. I can just run certain tasks as root, which is very important. And that's why Linux is deemed as more secure, because in Windows, you log in. If you have administrative level privileges, you have, you know, it doesn't matter. You're not switching users back and forth. You're not logging out and logging back in. You're an administrator. Then, gosh, you click on a link or something that's malicious, then you just gave that file administrative privileges to your computer, essentially. And in Linux, like I said, if you just do it on a per task basis, it seems to be more locked down and secure. Plus, the whole Linux file directory structure of what actually comprises of the operating system is divided up in ways, and permissions are set in ways that make it even more complex to really do damage to a machine, a Linux machine. And it's frankly it's unheard of. I mean, there's web application attacks and stuff like that, but I can't say unheard of. It's just not as likely. So if you see here, this is our IP address right now, and it's 10.1.5.99. If you see here, this is just our loopback address. This will always be here. This is your network interface, low and ends 33. Not quite sure if that just comes from the network adapter, where that name comes from, or what that means, but I'm going to guess it has something to do with that. So first things first, let's go ahead and change the IP address for that network interface here. So we want to change this. I'm going to change this to 10.1.55, well, actually 5.77. And as you can see, what's going to happen is it's going to say operation not permitted. The reason being is because I'm not root. So I have to switch over. Usually I would be prompted for a root password, but I'm not because there isn't one set. I just created this machine. I haven't really messed with it. So we'll go up a couple arrows, and you would think you'd be able to find that command you just ran, but it's actually just going to give you the commands that root has run. So keep that in mind too. Sometimes it's really easy because you can just up arrow and find a command, but it's only specific to that user. So I'm not going to get a live user command running as root. So we'll have to type it again. Okay. Now, if I do if config, it's actually showing this address now, which is weird, right? What we need to do is it's probably best if we do a service network stop and then a service network start. And sometimes this, I mean, usually a hard stop and start will do the trick. So for some reason, it might take a minute. This happened earlier. So meanwhile, it might take a couple seconds to replicate. I'm not quite sure, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of patience. And it hates me right now. Ah, you know what? I think we actually need to, I'm sorry guys, we need to go over here to the Etsy directory. In here, you'll see all the configuration that are really important. So you'll find like firewall config here. You'll find PAMD or PAM.D, which is the security configuration for Linux. There's a lot of different configuration files. If you want to take a look at one of these, let's do that so I can show you how complicated it is and what kind of crap I have to look at on a daily basis nowadays. So here is a config for SSH. In here, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but in here, if I made some changes, I might only allow certain people to remote into my machine, for example. And what I would do is I would try to find out, or I would know which one I need to change in here. So that's just an example, but let's get back to the host file. So in here, it'll actually map an IP address to a domain name like I was talking about earlier. Let's run that command one more time. It still doesn't look like it's changed. So we're going to do the if config ends 33 10.1.5.99. Let's just set it to that. Again, you can't do that. Okay, now it finally took it. So sometimes a restart, sometimes a start and stop, sometimes it just, you have to have patience. So our IP address has actually changed, and we have mapped the OSD1 name to this address. So let's say I'm on another machine and I'm like, hey, I need to get over to the machine we're on right now, this OSD1. I need to get over there, but I don't remember the IP, but for some reason I remember the name. I might be able to just do and then OSD1 dot, whatever. It depends. It really depends, but it's just a way to give it a human readable name that you can remember. And that's how DNS works. And I suggest that you learn DNS inside and out as much as you can. Uh, we'll go over that a little bit about whois records and stuff like that, because I do have some experience with that and registering domains and kind of how that whole process works. But for today, that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to show you some basic commands again. We went over pwd, ls. You could also do dir. It's kind of the same thing. What else did we go over? We went over the Etsy host file, which maps a name to an IP. And then we also went over and I told you guys how to change the IP address, whatever I changed it to. And then finally, we did network service restart to get it to accept our changes. So that's pretty much it for now. This should be persistent upon reboot, but I'm probably not going to really shut this down today. So we don't really have time for that right now, but I will catch you guys in the next video, and please give me some suggestions as to what you want to learn and things that I can help you with. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.